My son's wife screamed at me in my own kitchen. "Pay the rent or get out," she snapped, her voice echoing off the cabinets I built with my own hands. I stood there, clutching the edge of the counter, the same one where my late wife used to roll out pie crusts every Sunday. My son, Evan, leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, saying nothing, just watching. That silence cut deeper than her words. I raised him in this house. I bled for this roof. And now they wanted to charge me rent? No. If I was leaving, I'd take everything. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. I wasn't always this tired old man standing in a kitchen he no longer recognizes. There was a time this house rang with laughter, the scent of fresh baked bread, and the sounds of Marjorie humming while folding laundry. We bought this place in 1983, just a worn-out shell on a patch of stubborn soil. But to us, it was a castle. The bank manager said we were crazy putting so much faith in something that needed so much work. I just smiled and told him, we're not afraid of building things with our own hands. And build, we did. I was a carpenter by trade, and every evening after work, I'd spend another few hours fixing that place up. Weekends were for roof repairs, painting, installing cabinets. Marjorie was right there with me, sanding baseboards while 8 months pregnant. She never once complained, not even when I cut my hand so deep one night that I bled all over the new floors. She wrapped it, kissed my forehead, and said, "Well, now this house has your blood in it. It's officially ours." Evan came along in the spring. The house was still unfinished, but it didn't matter. His nursery was a tiny room off the back of our bedroom, painted soft yellow by Marjorie's careful hands. I remember waking up at 3 a.m. to feedings, diaper changes, lullabies. It was exhausting, but it was joy, too. Real joy. The kind that fills your chest so full you think it might burst. Marjorie had this way of turning a house into a home. She made curtains out of old bedsheets, filled the kitchen with little knickknacks from flea markets, and kept a calendar taped to the fridge with birthdays written in perfect cursive. She called it her command center, and no birthday or anniversary ever slipped past her. As Evan grew, so did the house. I built an extension off the back, a sunroom just for her. Marjorie filled it with books, plants, and wicker furniture. It became her sanctuary. I still remember her curled up there in the mornings, a cup of tea warming her hands, the sun kissing her cheeks. Evan was a curious, quiet boy. Loved puzzles, hated spinach. We weren't rich, not by a long shot, but every Christmas, we made sure he had something wrapped with a big red bow. I taught him how to ride a bike on the gravel driveway, how to patch a tire, and how to hold a hammer. Measure twice, cut once, I'd say. He used to nod like it was scripture. There were traditions, too. Sunday dinners with roast beef and mashed potatoes. Summer barbecues with the neighbors. Marjorie always insisted we eat at the table, no matter how busy we were. She said, "This table isn't just for food. It's where we love each other out loud." And we did. We really did. I worked extra hours when Evan started showing interest in college. Saved every penny in a coffee can under the sink, Marjorie's idea. She called it the dream jar. By the time he graduated high school, we'd scraped together just enough to help him with tuition. Watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown, Marjorie gripped my hand so tight I thought she might crush it. "We did it," she whispered. "Our boy's going places." I thought we'd done everything right. We raised him with patience, respect, and warmth. We never hit. Never yelled. We listened, even when we didn't understand. And when he got accepted to a university 2 hours away, we helped him move into his dorm. I remember hugging him goodbye, tears in my eyes, and whispering, "No matter where you go, this house will always be your home." I didn't know that one day, he'd forget that. When Marjorie got sick, Evan was still finishing school. He came home when he could, brought flowers, sat by her bed. But after she passed, something changed. A distance grew. Subtle at first, shorter phone calls, forgotten birthdays. I chalked it up to grief. We were all hurting. He got a job in the city, started dating a girl named Lisa. I was happy for him. Truly. I even offered to help with the down payment on their first apartment. He said no. "We've got it, Dad." But thanks. For a while, I thought we were okay. He still came around. We had dinners together, fixed things around the house. He never mentioned rent. Never made me feel like a burden. And then, when he and Lisa got married and their lease ran out, I offered the spare room. It was temporary, I told myself. Just a few months until they found something new. But months turned to years. Lisa slowly redecorated everything, new curtains, new paint, even boxed up Marjorie's photo albums and stashed them in the attic. Still, I said nothing. I thought, they're young. They're starting out. This is what family does, we help. But lately, I'd started noticing the silences. The way Lisa rolled her eyes when I talked about Marjorie. The way Evan seemed tired of my stories. The house I built, the life I carved out from dust and sweat, started to feel occupied. Like I was the guest. Still, I clung to those early years. To the echoes of Marjorie's laughter, the creak in the hallway floor where Evan used to run with socks on. I walked through the house like a man searching for ghosts, whispering thanks for the memories stitched into every beam. I never imagined those same walls would someday close in on me. It didn't happen all at once. If it had, maybe I would have seen it coming. But it was slow, quiet. Like water dripping through a crack in the ceiling, unnoticed until the whole beam rots. At first, it was little things. Lisa stopped calling me Dad. Not that I ever asked her to, but she used to say it naturally, like we were family. Now it was just George, sharp and clipped, like a reminder that I wasn't her father and never would be. She began rearranging the house without asking. My tools, which always hung neatly in the shed, got moved to make room for storage boxes filled with things she never used. Marjorie's books disappeared from the sunroom shelves, replaced with color-coded vases and decorative candles that smelled like chemicals. I found her old gardening gloves one day, tossed in a bin labeled miscellaneous. I stood there, holding them in my hands for a long time. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store to find Lisa painting over the floral wallpaper Marjorie had picked out for the dining room. No warning, no discussion. Just white paint covering up decades of Sunday dinners, birthday candles, and Thanksgiving prayers. I didn't say anything. What could I say? Stop erasing my wife? Evan, for his part, wasn't cruel. But he wasn't the boy I raised either. He started to grow quiet around me. Distracted. He'd eat dinner with one eye on his phone, chuckling at messages I wasn't part of. When I asked him how work was, he'd say, "Busy, Dad," and change the subject. The worst part? He seemed tired of me. Not angry, not hostile, just done. Like my presence was something he tolerated, like an old radio playing too loud in the background. One night, I overheard Lisa on the phone in the living room. "No, he's still here. I know, it's ridiculous. Evan won't say anything. But come on, we're grown adults living with his dad. It's not normal." I stood in the hallway, gripping the banister. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but I caught the words, "He doesn't even pay rent." Like I was freeloading off my own home. I tried not to read into it. Maybe she was just venting. People say things in private they don't always mean. But after that, things began shifting faster. The living room became her space. She got rid of the recliner Marjorie gave me for my birthday, said it was too bulky and made the place look dated. I found it outside one morning with a free sign taped to the back. My dinners changed too. She stopped cooking for 3. Some nights they ordered takeout and didn't tell me. I'd come into the kitchen to find empty cartons and wine glasses, laughter echoing from behind the closed bedroom door. I'd make a sandwich, alone, and eat in the sunroom with the lights dimmed. I started doing odd things to feel useful. Cleaning gutters. Fixing the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. Repainting the shed. Evan barely noticed. Lisa definitely didn't. Once, when I asked Evan if he needed help assembling a new desk, he said, "Nah, we've got it," then added, "Just relax, Dad." Like I was a piece of furniture that had outlived its use. I remember one morning in particular. Lisa had friends over for brunch. I came downstairs in my robe, expecting coffee like always. Instead, she looked at me like I'd walked in naked. "Oh," she said, glancing at her friends. "Didn't realize you were still here." Still here. I backed out of the room quietly. Sat on the porch for an hour, sipping black coffee from a thermos, the one Marjorie had given me when I retired. I watched the wind tug at the garden weeds she used to keep so neat, and I thought, is this what it means to outlive your welcome in your own home? After that, I stopped going into shared spaces as much. Kept to my room. Walked to the diner downtown for meals when I could. I told myself I didn't mind. I told myself I liked the solitude. But truth was, the silence in that house started to feel cruel. Even the dog, Charlie, my old mutt from the shelter, started sleeping in the garage. Lisa said he shed too much. Evan didn't argue. I didn't press. Just laid an old quilt down for him next to my toolbox and told him, "At least we've got each other, huh?" Charlie wagged his tail, but even he looked tired. One evening, I tried to bring up the past. I showed Evan an old photo, him and Marjorie in the garden, both grinning, hands covered in dirt. "Remember that day?" I asked. He barely glanced. "Yeah, I guess," and went back to texting. That was when I knew something had shifted for good. My son didn't live in the same house I did. Not really. I lived in a memory. He lived in convenience. The power had shifted, too. I paid the taxes, I owned the deed, but I was made to feel like I owed them something. Like I should be grateful for the leftover space in a home I had built from the ground up. I thought maybe I was being sensitive. Old. Sentimental. But then came the day Lisa put a small envelope on my bedroom door. I opened it, expecting a note or bill. It was a list. Utilities. Water. Internet. Suggested monthly contribution. At the bottom, a sticky note, "It's only fair." That night, I sat in the sunroom, staring at the blank walls where Marjorie's books once sat, and thought, fair? I gave them everything. And now they were asking me to pay to exist? I knew something had to change. I just didn't know how, yet. It was Evan's birthday. 40 years old. I had planned to cook him his favorite, beef stew, the way Marjorie used to make it, slow-cooked with potatoes, onions, and just a hint of clove. I got up early, peeled everything by hand, even dusted off Marjorie's old recipe card. I thought maybe, just maybe, it could be a good day. A day that reminded him of who we were. By 5 o'clock, the table was set. I put out the good dishes. Lit a candle, even. The smell filled the house, warm, savory, comforting. It smelled like home used to. But 7 o'clock came, and they still hadn't shown up. I texted Evan, "Dinner's ready." No reply. At 7:30, I heard the front door open. Laughter. Heels on the hardwood floor. Then more voices, multiple people. I stepped into the hallway and saw them all, Evan, Lisa, and about 10 friends, carrying bottles of wine and paper-wrapped bakery boxes. Lisa turned to me, surprised to see me standing there. "Oh," she said. "Didn't realize you'd be home." I looked at my son. "I made stew." He blinked. "Oh, we're doing cake and wine with friends tonight. Maybe tomorrow, Dad?" Lisa chimed in, already halfway into the kitchen, the dining room set up for the guests, so, could you maybe eat in the sunroom? My legs felt like they weighed 100 pounds. I walked back to the kitchen without another word. The stew was still warm on the stove, untouched. I spooned it into a bowl and carried it to the sunroom like some unwelcome tenant. Through the glass, I could see them laughing, taking selfies around the table I had built with my own hands. They brought out a store-bought cake with little gold candles. Lisa clapped and gave Evan a kiss on the cheek. My stew sat in silence beside me. After a while, I heard Lisa's voice carry through the thin walls. "We'll probably move the old guy's stuff out of the garage next. Evan's tools are all jammed up." Another voice, I think it was her cousin, laughed. "Wait, he still lives here?" "Yeah," she scoffed. "Like a permanent house guest who forgot how to leave." Evan didn't laugh, but he didn't say anything either. That silence, that awful, cowardly silence, was the real betrayal. I stayed in that room the rest of the night. Charlie came to lay beside me, sensing something was off. I fed him a piece of beef from the stew and just sat there, listening to them clink glasses and sing off-key. When they finally left, I didn't go to bed. I just cleaned up. Washed every dish they left behind. Wiped the counters. Blew out the candle, still flickering by the cold stew pot. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Lisa redecorating again. The birthday banner still hung over the doorway, but she was already rearranging chairs, sweeping up crumbs. "You should have told us you were making dinner," she said without looking up. "We had plans." I stared at her. It was his birthday. I thought tradition still meant something. She shrugged. "Well, things change. We're adults now. We have lives." I walked into the living room. The couch had been moved again. My recliner, the one they hadn't managed to toss yet, was pushed into the far corner, practically facing the wall. Evan came downstairs, rubbing his neck. "Hey," he muttered. "Sorry about last night." That was it. No explanation. No effort to repair what was broken. Just, "Sorry. You let her mock me in front of your friends," I said quietly. "And you didn't say a word." He sighed, already annoyed. "Dad, you're taking this too personally. Lisa jokes. That's how she is." "No, Evan," I said. "That's how you let her be. In my house." That was the moment I saw it, really saw it. He didn't see it as mine anymore. Not the bricks I laid, not the garden Marjorie tended, not the rooms where I watched him grow. In his eyes, this house belonged to them now. I was just part of the furniture. Later that week, we had a family gathering. My daughter Anne came with her husband and kids. I thought, maybe with more people around, things would feel normal again. Maybe I could pull Evan aside, talk to him man to man. But when Lisa handed out seating cards for dinner and didn't even assign me a seat at the table, I realized this wasn't neglect. This was erasure. I ended up eating on a folding chair in the corner while Lisa made a toast about new chapters and letting go of the past. No one said a word. Not Anne. Not Evan. Not even my oldest grandson, who used to sit on my knee while I read him The Wind in the Willows. That night, I closed the door to my room and didn't come out for a full day. The next morning, I went up to the attic, the one place Lisa hadn't touched. I found Marjorie's photo albums buried under holiday decorations and old luggage. I sat there for hours, flipping through faded pages, looking at the life we built. Her handwriting was on every caption: Evan's first steps. Spring '89. Dad's surprise party. 1996, our anniversary in the garden. 2004. I ran my fingers over her words and whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have protected it better." But I wasn't done. Not yet. Something in me began to shift. A quiet, steady voice deep inside that said, "They think they've won. They think they've taken everything." They hadn't. Not yet. It was a Tuesday when I found the folder. I hadn't meant to snoop. I was looking for a wrench in the hallway cabinet, the one where I kept odds and ends like spare light bulbs and old batteries. But when I pulled it open, a thick manila folder fell out, landing on my foot. I bent over slowly, the way old men do when their knees argue back, and picked it up. The tab was labeled, "Rental Contracts, Drafts." Curiosity is a dangerous thing for a man who already feels displaced. I opened it. Inside were two typed-up forms. Both had my name on them. The first was titled, "Room Lease Agreement, George Whitmore." It listed my current room as Unit A, included utility charges, a rental rate of $1,200 a month, and a due date, the first of every month. It even had a clause about guests and quiet hours. The second page was worse. It was an application for property refinancing, but not in my name. It listed Evan and Lisa as primary residents and referenced intent to purchase upon transfer of ownership. I stared at those papers so long the words blurred. My hands trembled as I slid them back into the folder and gently returned it to the cabinet. I didn't want them to know I'd seen it. Not yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Marjorie's voice, soft, steady, "Be patient, George. But don't be blind." So I started watching. Listening. I noticed how Lisa always checked the mailbox first. She'd slip certain envelopes into her purse before Evan even saw them. I caught her whispering on the phone late at night, walking circles around the backyard, saying things like, "He won't be here forever, and, once it's finalized, we can update the locks." Evan avoided me more. He left early, came home late, kept conversations to, "Hey," and "Good night." Once, I caught him standing in the sunroom, staring out the window with a look I couldn't place, guilt or resignation, maybe both. They thought I was too old to notice. But I saw everything. And I remembered everything too, including the fact that the house was still in my name, paid off completely, and protected by a will Marjorie and I had drafted 15 years ago. Still, the betrayal wasn't just in the papers. It was in the tone of their voices, in the way they'd started talking around me, not to me. A few days later, I overheard a conversation that pierced deeper than anything else. Lisa was on speakerphone with her sister. I was in the garage, the door cracked open just enough. "No, seriously," Lisa said, laughing, "he thinks this is still his house. I told Evan, the moment we get his signature, we're changing everything. The carpet, the kitchen, maybe even knock down that stupid sunroom." Her sister asked something I didn't catch. Lisa replied, "Oh, he'll sign. One way or another. The guilt trip thing is old. I'm not here to play nursemaid." She ended the call with, "Sooner we get that equity, the sooner we can start our future." Our future. Like I was some crumbling wall standing in their way. I closed the garage door as quietly as I could and went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, sunken cheeks, a face aged by grief and years of silence. Then I reached for the drawer where I kept the folder from the lawyer. The one I hadn't touched since Marjorie's funeral. Inside was the original deed. My name. Sole owner. Signed and notarized. Behind it was our will, the one that left the house to Evan with conditions. One of them being that I would have lifetime residence rights. They either hadn't read it or didn't care. But I did. That night, I sat in the sunroom and pulled out Marjorie's photo albums again. I needed her. Not just her memory, I needed her voice, her wisdom, her strength. Page after page showed us building this life: birthdays, anniversaries, Evan's school plays, our 25th wedding anniversary where she wore that blue dress she loved. In one photo, I'm holding Evan in the backyard, both of us covered in sawdust, laughing like fools. I traced the photo with my finger and whispered, "I don't know what happened to him. But I did. He changed. Or maybe I just stopped being useful." And now they wanted to legally make me a tenant, in my own home. That night, I made a quiet decision. No more hoping. No more waiting. I wasn't going to beg for space in the life I built. If they wanted a business transaction, they'd get one, just not the one they expected. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and the lease agreement Lisa had written up. It was crisp, stapled neatly, like they expected me to sign without reading. I placed it between us as Evan walked in, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "We need to talk," I said. He froze for a second, then nodded. "All right." "About what?" I pushed the paper toward him. "About this." His jaw tightened. "Look, Dad, Lisa and I have been covering a lot of the costs, groceries, utilities, and we thought it was time to formalize things. Just to keep things fair." "Fair?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Fair is charging your father rent in the house he built." He avoided my eyes. "You live here, Dad. Times are different now." "No," I said, voice steady. "You're different." He didn't respond. Just stood there, arms crossed, letting silence do the talking. That old, dangerous silence he'd been using like a shield ever since Marjorie died. I took a deep breath. "I know about the refinance plans. The contract. I found the papers." His face turned pale, then flushed red. "You went through our things?" "They were in the hallway cabinet. Next to my tools." Lisa walked in halfway through the conversation, holding a mug of tea. She looked at the papers on the table and sighed. "Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag." I turned to her. "You really thought I'd sign that? Just hand over rights to my own home?" "We're trying to make this work for everyone," she said, with that practiced sweetness that barely covered the contempt in her eyes. "But if you can't contribute like the rest of us—" "I contributed," I snapped. "I contributed my life to this house. I worked 3 jobs so Evan could go to college. I laid every tile, painted every wall. Your name doesn't belong on a single brick." Evan stepped forward, more annoyed than ashamed. "Dad, you're making this harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" I laughed, bitter, dry. "You mean like living in silence in my own home? Like watching your wife mock the woman who made your favorite meals? Or like watching you stand by and say nothing, over and over?" Lisa scoffed. "This is exactly why we need structure. You're emotional and unpredictable." I stared at her, then turned to Evan. "Is this what you want? Her way? Her house? Her rules?" He didn't answer. Just stared at the floor. That told me everything. I stood up, calm now. "All right. You'll have your answer soon." They thought I meant I'd cave. Sign the paper. Start writing checks like some elderly tenant clinging to dignity. What I meant was something entirely different. The next day, I made a few calls. Quiet ones. First to Harold, my old friend and real estate agent. Then to Ruth, the lawyer Marjorie and I used when we first drafted our will. I asked her to pull the documents and review our options, especially the clause about lifetime residence and asset protection. "Do you want to update the will?" she asked. "More than that," I said. "I want to rewrite the ending." Ruth chuckled lightly. "That sounds like a woman's line." "Your wife?" I smiled. She'd have said the same thing. Later that week, I went into town for some air. The coffee shop owner, Lydia, a kind woman who used to bake pies with Marjorie for church socials, waved me over. "You all right, George? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," I said. "Of being invisible." She tilted her head. "You're not invisible, sweetheart. You just need to remind people who you are." I nodded slowly. That line stuck with me. That afternoon, I started gathering documents, title deeds, receipts, tax records. I made copies of everything, organized them into folders, and kept them in a fireproof lockbox I'd bought the same year Evan was born. I didn't want to start a war, I just wanted to be ready. Then something unexpected happened. Franklin, my neighbor of 20 years, stopped by while I was trimming the hedges. He leaned on the fence and said, "Heard from my nephew that Evan's talking about refinancing. That true?" I nodded. "You okay with that?" I shook my head. "Not even close." He spat into the grass. "Good. You built this street, George. Don't let them take what you gave your life to." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not peacefully, but with purpose. The next day, Lisa confronted me in the kitchen again. This time, she held a clipboard. "We need you to sign these today. For the loan pre-approval." I looked her in the eyes, then smiled. "No." Her mouth opened, stunned. "What?" I said no. "I'm not signing anything. In fact," I added, "I think it's time I made some changes myself." Evan walked in, sensing the tension. "Dad, what's going on?" "I'm taking back my home," I said quietly. "And whatever happens next, it's on you." They didn't know what I meant. But soon, they would. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and lemon polish. Same place Marjorie and I had sat in 2 decades earlier, when we first wrote out our plans for the future, back when Evan was just starting college and we still thought time would be kind to us. Ruth hadn't changed much. Still wore her hair in a bun, still had those little reading glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. She smiled as I walked in, but it faded when she saw the look on my face. "I take it this isn't a social visit," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm here to rewrite my will." She gestured to the chair across from her desk and opened a fresh folder. "All right, George. Let's start from the top." We spent the next hour going over everything. I brought the deed, the old will, and a list of my assets, modest, but hard-earned. The house was the big one. Fully paid. Built with sweat and sacrifice. Marjorie had always said, if nothing else, we'll leave him the house. But now? Now I couldn't let that happen. "I want to remove Evan," I said flatly. "Completely. No inheritance. Not a penny." Ruth's pen stopped mid-sentence. She looked at me carefully. "You sure about that? Once we file this, it's binding. He won't take it well." "I'm aware," I said. "And I'm ready for it." She nodded. "All right. Do you want to leave it to someone else? Or split it?" I pulled out another piece of paper. "Here's what I want. Sell the house. After I'm gone, all proceeds go into a charitable trust. Something in Marjorie's name. For veterans or elderly men with no family. People like me." Ruth read it, then smiled softly. Marjorie would have liked that. I swallowed. Yeah. She always had room at our table. "And if Evan contests?" "I want a clause," I said firmly. "If he challenges the will, everything, and I mean everything, goes straight to charity. He gets nothing." "That'll hold up in court," she said. "But are you sure you don't want to leave him something symbolic? A letter, a photo?" I thought about it. Thought about that boy with sawdust in his hair, watching me hammer nails and asking, "Can I try, Dad?" Thought about the night I taught him how to tie a necktie before prom, and the way Marjorie cried seeing him all grown up. But that boy wasn't in my house anymore. That boy didn't laugh when his wife humiliated his father. That boy didn't hand me a lease like I was a boarder in the home where I raised him. "No," I said. "Nothing. He's had all I had to give." Ruth made the changes, printed them out, and slid them across the desk. I read every word. Carefully. Slowly. My hands didn't tremble this time. I signed at the bottom. As I stood to leave, Ruth asked, "George, do you feel okay about this?" I paused at the door. "No. But I feel right about it." The walk back to the car felt lighter than it should have. There was sadness, yes. A heavy kind. But beneath it, a sense of something I hadn't felt in months: control. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was choosing. At home, the air felt different. I knew I'd done something big, even if nobody else did yet. Evan was in the garage, fiddling with something on his laptop. Lisa was upstairs on another phone call, probably planning more renovations. I went into my room, locked the door, and opened Marjorie's top drawer. Inside was the small wooden box she always used for her jewelry. I never touched it after she passed. But today, I needed something from her. I found it, her wedding ring, still as shiny as the day I slid it onto her finger. I held it in my palm, closed my eyes, and whispered, "I did it, Marge. I protected what we built." Then I placed the ring back in the box, tucked the signed documents beside the deed in the lockbox under my bed, and went to bed early. The next few days were quiet. Tense, but quiet. Lisa tried handing me another updated rental agreement. I slid it back across the table without a word. Evan finally asked, "So what's your plan, Dad?" "I've already started it," I said. That was the last full sentence we exchanged for a while. I began clearing out old things from the attic, not to make room for them, but for myself. I boxed up Marjorie's things with care, labeling each one. Some would go to charity. Some I would keep. And some, I knew, I'd want near me, wherever I went next. Because I was ready. Not to run. But to stand my ground. I knew Lisa would find out soon enough. She was nosy by nature, and I could already see her peeking at the mail more often, hovering when I had calls. But this time, I had the upper hand. This time, I had a plan. The final straw didn't snap with a bang. It came with a letter. A plain, white envelope slipped under my bedroom door like a motel bill. No conversation. No knock. Just cowardice and paper. At first, I thought it was another one of Lisa's contribution summaries, those little breakdowns of who used how much hot water or which light bulbs I apparently left on too long. But when I opened it and saw the word eviction notice typed in bold across the top, I froze. 30 days. They were giving me 30 days to leave my own house. I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper into my gut like cold stones. Effective immediately. Failure to vacate may result in legal proceedings. All future correspondence to be handled through their new family lawyer. It was signed by Evan. Not Lisa. Evan. That was the first time I felt something in me harden completely. Whatever soft thread was left between us, the kind that only survives between a father and son, snapped clean through. I folded the letter and placed it next to Marjorie's wedding ring. Then I packed a small bag, just a few clothes, my documents, and a photo of the 3 of us from Evan's high school graduation. I left the stew pot on the stove. Left the lawnmower half-gassed in the shed. Left everything, because I knew I wasn't staying. But I wasn't running either. I had one more thing to do. I drove out to the edge of town, to the little office building with "Whitmore and Burns Realty" printed in fading gold letters across the window. Harold Burns had been my friend for nearly 35 years. He helped me buy the house. Watched Evan grow up. Attended Marjorie's funeral with a bouquet of lilies and tears in his eyes. When I walked in, he looked up from his desk and said, "You sure you're ready?" "I'm more than ready," I said. "List the house." He blinked. "George, once we do this, there's no going back. You'll have to give them notice." I pulled out the eviction letter and slid it across the desk. "They already gave me mine." His jaw tightened. "I'll make some calls." I sat in the waiting chair, listening to the old clock tick on the wall. It was quiet, almost peaceful. Like standing on a shoreline before a storm. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel grief. Just clarity. Back at home, Lisa was on the phone in the kitchen, laughing as she poured wine. I walked right past her, didn't say a word. She paused for a moment, watching me carry the file folder into the sunroom, probably assuming I was going off to sulk. Let her think what she wanted. I called Ruth and gave her the go-ahead to finalize the trust papers and execute the new will. "I want all documents certified and filed within 48 hours, I told her. "And I'd like a witness copy." "You got it," she said. Then I emailed Harold a scanned copy of the deed, the will, and the trust agreement. Told him to set a meeting with a buyer he'd mentioned, a contractor looking for an older property with character. I figured, if someone had to own the place after me, it should be someone who would see value in what it was, not what it could be flipped into. That night, Evan knocked on my door for the first time in days. I opened it. "You didn't come down for dinner?" "Nope." He shifted awkwardly. "Lisa made pasta." I wasn't hungry. He looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. Finally, he asked, "Did you get the letter?" I nodded. "I did." "And?" "I'll be out before the 30 days are up." He looked surprised, almost relieved. "That's good." "Evan," I said, "did it ever cross your mind to talk to me first? Before you sent a legal document to your father?" He looked down. "Lisa thought it was cleaner this way." "No, Evan," I said. "Lisa thought it was easier. You agreed because you didn't want to feel guilty saying it to my face." He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. I stepped forward. "You chose her. I get it. You think I'm old, in the way, maybe a little stubborn. But I am not stupid. And I am not weak. I never said you were. You didn't have to." I shut the door. The next day, Harold called. Offer came in. Full asking. They want a 30-day close. "Accept it," I said. By Friday, the papers were signed. On Monday, the for sale sign went up. Lisa saw it first. I heard the front door slam open, her heels clacking across the floor as she came to my door. "What is that?" she hissed. "A sign," I said calmly. "I'm selling the house." "You can't." "I can." I did. She stormed off screaming for Evan. 10 minutes later, they were both outside, arms flailing, yelling into the phone, probably calling lawyers they couldn't afford. But it was done. Legal. Sealed. The house was no longer ours. Not mine. Not theirs. It was simply, moving on. Like I was. Evan's birthday fell on a Sunday that year, exactly 1 week after the eviction letter. They still had no idea what was coming. Lisa planned a big dinner again, same as last year. Streamers, catered food, more wine than a wedding. I overheard her telling a friend, "It'll be nice to celebrate now that we're getting the place to ourselves." She didn't even lower her voice anymore. I decided it was the perfect time. Let them have their celebration. Let them gather everyone they wanted to impress. And let the truth land where it may. When I walked through the front door, dressed in my best gray blazer, the one Marjorie bought me for our 30th anniversary, the room fell silent. I hadn't been seen outside my room in days. Lisa forced a smile. "George. We didn't know if you'd come down." "I wouldn't miss Evan's big day," I said. I walked slowly, deliberately, toward the dining table where Lisa's friends and Evan's co-workers were sipping wine and chatting. Evan stood by the fireplace, a beer in hand. When he saw me approaching with a manila folder, his face stiffened. "I won't take long," I said, setting the folder on the table. "I just need a few minutes. Then you can go back to your party." Everyone looked at Evan. He didn't stop me. Didn't say a word. I opened the folder and took out 3 documents. "First," I said, holding up the first paper, "this is the original deed to this house. Paid in full by me and my late wife, Marjorie. No co-owners. No co-signers. Just us." Murmurs passed around the table. Second, I held up a notarized document. "This is my updated will. As of last week, Evan has been removed as a beneficiary. In fact, if he contests it, the entire estate, including sale proceeds from this house, will be donated to a trust in Marjorie's name to help elderly men without families." Lisa opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "Third," I said, holding up the last paper, "this is a signed purchase agreement. The house has been sold. You have 27 days to vacate." Gasps. Forks clinked against plates. Evan stepped forward. "Dad, you sold the house?" "You gave me 30 days to leave," I said calmly. "I decided to take everything with me." Lisa went red. "You can't do that. This is our home." "No," I said. "It was mine. Then you treated me like a tenant. So I became a landlord." A woman across the table whispered, "Is this real?" I turned to her. "Real as the stew I made last year that no one touched." Evan's voice cracked. "Dad, this is insane. We just wanted to set some boundaries." "No," I said. "You wanted control. And now you've lost it." Lisa exploded. "You are a vindictive old man." "Perhaps," I said, picking up the folder. "But I'm also the legal owner. And I've chosen peace, just not here." I walked toward the door as the silence swallowed them whole. Before I stepped outside, I turned back. I spent a lifetime building something that should have lasted beyond me. I just didn't realize the rot was coming from inside the walls. And with that, I left. The street was quiet as I walked down the path. No one followed. No apologies. No shouting. Just the fading hum of a birthday party that had turned into a reckoning. The next morning, the house was quiet. Evan and Lisa didn't come out of their room. The for sale sign now had a bright red sold sticker slapped across it. By the end of the week, the buyer had toured the house and set the closing date. My lawyer notified Evan and Lisa formally. 30 days. No extensions. I packed slowly, methodically. Boxed up Marjorie's things with care. The rest? I left behind. Let the new owners decide what mattered. Lisa tried once to corner me in the hallway. "You really want to die alone, George?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "No. But I'd rather die alone than live surrounded by people who pretend to love me." She didn't speak to me again. Evan didn't either. But I noticed something, in those last days. He watched me. Quietly. Regretfully. But never brave enough to speak. And that was punishment enough. Do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The day I handed over the keys, the house was empty. Not of furniture. Evan and Lisa were still there, boxes half-packed, tension hanging in the air, but empty of something deeper. Memory. Warmth. Soul. I didn't say goodbye. I just set the keys on the kitchen counter, the same counter where Marjorie used to leave little notes for me, lunch in the fridge, or don't forget to take your pills. The marble was colder now. Sterile. Like the people who claimed it for themselves. I stepped out, closed the door, and didn't look back. I moved into a small cottage on the outskirts of town, a place Harold found for me. It was nothing grand. 2 bedrooms, squeaky floors, and a porch that leaned just a bit too far to the left. But it was quiet. And it was mine. The first morning there, I woke up before sunrise. No arguing voices. No passive-aggressive footsteps outside my door. Just birdsong and the creak of old wood. I made coffee and sat on the porch wrapped in a flannel blanket. Watched the fog lift off the grass. It reminded me of the mornings Marjorie and I used to sit in the sunroom, her hands around a mug, her toes tucked under mine. I whispered to her like I always did when I felt alone. I did it, Marge. I did what you would have wanted. I stood up for us. The silence after everything was louder than I expected. For a while, the quiet was unbearable. I didn't miss the house, not really. I missed what it used to hold. Laughter. Closeness. A boy who used to call me Dad like it meant something. Now, it was just me. And memories. The town, as expected, began to buzz. People talked. I heard snippets at the post office, the grocery store, the diner downtown. Some called me cold. Others called me brave. A few said I had finally lost it. But most? Most just nodded when they saw me, as if they understood something bigger than gossip. Lydia, the cafe owner, brought me a pie one afternoon, apple cinnamon, Marjorie's favorite. I heard what happened, she said, placing the pie on my porch table. You're not the only one it's happened to, you know. I looked at her, surprised. My brother's kids tried the same thing, she said. Locked him out of his own cabin after they got power of attorney. Sold it while he was in rehab. What happened? I asked. He moved in with me. And he never forgave them. She left after that, but her words stayed. You're not the only one. That thought began to echo louder than the silence. I began to write again, something I hadn't done since Marjorie passed. I filled notebooks with letters to her. Thoughts. Bits of the story that no one else would hear. Writing helped clear the dust off my soul. It reminded me that even if they tried to erase me from my own life, I still had the power to remember. A week after I moved, someone knocked on the door. It was one of the neighbor kids, maybe 10 years old, holding a grocery bag. Mom said you might need milk and bread. I smiled. Tell your mom she's right. He lingered. You used to live on Oak Street, right? The big house? I did. My grandpa said you built it yourself. I did that too. He grinned. Cool. He left, but something about that moment stayed with me. In his voice, there was no pity. Just curiosity. Admiration, even. Maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. Over the next few days, small things began to change. Charlie, my old mutt, finally started eating again. He'd refused food the whole time we were still in that house. Now he wagged his tail like he used to, curling up beside my feet as I read on the porch. A few neighbors dropped by with tomatoes from their gardens, tools I could borrow, stories they thought I'd enjoy. Nothing grand. But it felt like belonging. The quiet began to feel less empty and more peaceful. Then, one afternoon, a knock came that froze me in place. I opened the door to find my eldest grandson, Nathan, standing there awkwardly, hands in his hoodie pockets. Hi, Grandpa. I hadn't seen him since the eviction. "Hi, Nathan," I said. I heard what happened. Mom and Dad are saying a lot of stuff. But I wanted to hear your side." I stepped aside. "Come in, son." He walked in slowly, looking around at the small living room, the boxes I still hadn't unpacked, the framed photo of Marjorie and me on the mantel. He picked it up. "I miss her," he said softly. "Me too." We sat and talked. Not about legal papers or houses or inheritances, just memories. About the time I took him fishing. About the way Marjorie used to sneak him an extra cookie when his mom wasn't looking. He looked at me and said, "I know things got messed up. But I remember how you used to be. And I remember how it felt to be around you." That was enough. More than enough. After he left, I stood at the window and watched him walk away. He turned once and waved. I waved back. The morning after Nathan visited, I sat at the small kitchen table, sipping black coffee and staring at the framed photo of Marjorie. It was taken in the garden, just after we planted the lilacs. Her hair was tied back, cheeks rosy from the sun, eyes full of life. I'd looked at that picture 100 times. But that day, something shifted. I stopped seeing what I lost. I started seeing what she would have done with what was left. She hated self-pity. "Sadness has its place," she used to say, "but don't let it build a home in you." So I got up. Took a walk through the neighborhood. Said hello to people I didn't know yet. And somehow ended up back at the community center. I hadn't been there since the food drive Marjorie volunteered for every winter. She used to run the whole thing, organizing canned goods, assigning drivers, checking up on the elderly who couldn't leave their homes. Inside, the place still smelled like old wood and coffee. There were flyers on the corkboard, book clubs, CPR classes, support groups. One flyer caught my eye, men's support group, Thursdays at 4 p.m. For widowers, veterans, and anyone feeling a little left behind. Feeling a little left behind. That about summed it up. I didn't go in that day. But I returned on Thursday. There were 6 of us. 7, if you counted the facilitator, a retired Navy medic named Tom who wore flannel and had a voice like gravel. We didn't share much at first, mostly complaints about the price of eggs or how our knees didn't work the way they used to. But when it came my turn to talk, I surprised myself. "I lost my house," I said. "Not to a storm or fire. To my own son." Heads turned. Not in judgment, but in understanding. "They tried to turn me into a tenant," I went on. "Made me feel like a burden in a place I built from scratch. So I sold it. Every inch. And walked away." Tom nodded. "You didn't walk away, George. You took your life back." After the meeting, a man named Ruben, Vietnam vet, wiry, kind eyes, walked beside me out to the parking lot. "You know," he said, "there's a lot of us out here. Men like you. Men like me. Folks who gave everything and still ended up forgotten." I looked at him. "Yeah. There's more of us than people want to admit." He tapped the side of my arm. "What if we did something about that?" I didn't sleep much that night. My mind was racing. I kept seeing that photo of Marjorie, her sleeves rolled up, handing out cans of soup, smiling like the weight of the world wasn't too heavy to carry with love. The next morning, I called Ruth. "I want to set up a trust," I said. "Not just for after I'm gone. I want to use some of the house money now. Put it into something that matters." She asked, "What do you have in mind?" I told her everything. Within a week, the paperwork was drawn up. The Marjorie Whitmore Fund for Forgotten Fathers. I called it that because I wanted her name to live on in the hearts of people who needed what she gave so easily: comfort, warmth, dignity. With Harold's help, I found a small, run-down boarding house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, 4 bedrooms, a big kitchen, and a backyard that needed love. The owners were eager to sell. I was eager to begin. The sale closed fast. I stood on the porch with the keys in my hand, heart pounding like I was 20 again. The paint was chipped. The roof sagged. But I saw potential. Just like I saw in that empty lot where we built our first home all those years ago. Over the next few weeks, I got to work. Hammer in hand, knees aching, I repainted every wall. Reuben came by with tools. Tom brought over a truckload of donated furniture. Lydia from the cafe brought coffee and muffins every morning, like clockwork. The men from the support group began stopping by to help. We shared stories while we sanded floors and fixed cabinets. One day, we laughed so hard over a broken water heater that I forgot, for a moment, what it meant to feel lonely. That house came alive. Not just with noise, but with purpose. We named it Marjorie's Place. It wasn't just a name, it was a promise. A promise that no man would spend his final years wondering if he mattered. I put up a small sign by the front door, "You are not a burden here." We were still getting it off the ground, but already, applications were coming in. Veterans. Widowers. Men like me, once proud, now discarded. They didn't want much. Just a room, a warm meal, and someone who would listen. I gave them all 3. And in doing so, I gave myself something I hadn't had in a long time, peace. One evening, as I swept the front steps, Nathan stopped by again. He looked around at the freshly painted siding, the flowers Lydia had planted by the mailbox, the laughter coming from inside the kitchen. "This is yours?" he asked. "Ours," I said. "Marjorie's too." He nodded. "It feels good here." "Yeah," I said. "It finally does." We opened Marjorie's Place quietly, no ribbons, no press, no speeches. Just coffee brewing on the stove, clean sheets on every bed, and a hand-painted welcome sign by the door that read, "Home is where someone waits for you." The first man who moved in was Albert. 81. Widowed. His daughter hadn't spoken to him in 6 years after he refused to sell his farm to fund her second divorce. He walked into the house holding nothing but a duffel bag and a bag of peanut brittle. "You sure there's room for me?" he asked. "There's always room for good men," I said. Next came Walter, a quiet fellow who used to be a mechanic. Then Jerome, a retired music teacher who still wore his conductor's pin on his lapel. They all came with their stories, most painful, some funny, all human. And slowly, something remarkable happened. The house filled with life. Every morning started with the smell of bacon and the sound of mismatched voices debating over whose turn it was to make eggs. Someone always burned the toast. Someone always made too much coffee. And someone always had a joke from 1962 that nobody understood, but we laughed anyway. We held dinner at the long wooden table I found second-hand and refinished myself. It reminded me of the one Marjorie used to set every Sunday. I could almost hear her humming as I laid out the plates. But this time, instead of waiting for my son and his wife to sit and scowl, I sat across from men who listened when I spoke. Who nodded when I told stories. Who reached for the salt without judgment, just habit and hospitality. This wasn't blood family. But it was something stronger, chosen family. Loyalty born not from obligation, but shared pain and hard-earned empathy. These men didn't ask me why I'd left my old house. They didn't pity me. They simply showed up, day after day, meal after meal, story after story. On the 3rd week, we held a small cookout in the backyard. Lydia brought pies. Tom played old country songs on his Bluetooth speaker. Even some neighbors dropped by, curious at first, then staying longer than they planned. That evening, I looked around at the laughter, the soft glow of string lights we'd hung along the fence, and the sight of Walter teaching Nathan how to sharpen a knife the old-school way, and I felt it. That quiet warmth. The kind that says, "You are seen. You are home." Later that night, Nathan came to me privately. He had that look kids get when they're trying to say something too big for their mouths. "Grandpa? Yeah? I think what you're doing here is cool." I smiled. "It's not much. It's more than anyone else is doing." He hesitated, then added, "I told Mom I came here. She wasn't happy." I nodded. "She doesn't have to be. I told her I wanted to keep visiting you." I looked at him carefully. "Did she say no?" "No. She just said it's your choice, and she doesn't want to be involved." That stung more than I let on. And had always been quieter during the chaos. Less cruel than Lisa, less complicit than Evan. But silence is its own kind of betrayal. Still, Nathan came back every weekend after that. Helped Jerome organize the bookcases. Played chess with Albert, who cheated shamelessly and laughed like a boy each time he got away with it. One Saturday, he brought his little sister with him, Lily, just 7, all energy and ponytails. "This place smells like Grandma's," she said as soon as she stepped inside. I felt my throat tighten. Nathan helped her put on an apron and made peanut butter cookies in the kitchen, careful not to burn them. The sight of her at the table, swinging her feet under the chair, made something in my chest loosen. After they left, I sat on the porch, the house behind me glowing with soft light, the laughter still echoing faintly through the walls. Evan never visited. Not once. I heard from Ruth that he tried to challenge the will, briefly. Then he read the clause. The one that said if he even attempted to contest it, everything would go straight to the charity. He backed off after that. No letter. No apology. Just silence. And I realized, I didn't need closure from him. I already had it. Because the people who filled this house now, these men, these neighbors, these children, they saw me not as a burden, but as something else entirely. A builder. Not just of homes. But of second chances. Reuben helped me install a garden bed in the backyard, and every man had a small patch to plant something of his own. Tomatoes. Peppers. Basil. Even a few wildflowers. We called it Marjorie's garden. Every time I knelt in the dirt, I felt her beside me. Not as a ghost, not as grief, but as part of the soil, the sky, the seeds that would keep growing long after I was gone. I once feared dying alone. Now, I know I never will. Because in this home, surrounded by laughter and loyalty and second acts, I found the kind of family they never taught us to ask for. But we built it anyway. Together. It was a Wednesday morning when I saw the car. A silver sedan, parked halfway across the street from Marjorie's place. The engine idled for a while, then shut off. The windows were tinted, but I recognized the shape of the man in the driver's seat. I waited. After a few minutes, the door opened. Evan stepped out. He looked older. Thinner than I remembered. He wasn't wearing a suit like he used to. Just jeans and a rumpled shirt. He stood by the car for a moment, staring at the house like it had grown legs and walked away from him. He didn't approach the porch. Just stood there. I almost turned away, but something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe something softer, held me still. Eventually, he crossed the street. "Hi, Dad," he said. I nodded. "Evan." We stood there in silence, the porch between us like a chasm. "This is the place?" he asked. "It is. It looks different. It's not for you to recognize anymore." He nodded slowly. "I heard about what you did. The charity. The trust. Nathan told me. I figured he might." "I didn't come to fight," he said. I'm not here about the will. That's good. You'd lose. Another long pause. Then, with a voice quieter than I ever remembered hearing from him, he said, Lisa and I separated. I said nothing. She wanted to flip the next house. Buy another one with the equity. Said I needed to stop looking backward. He let out a bitter chuckle. I guess I finally started looking backward. I still said nothing. He looked at the garden beds by the side of the porch. The rosemary was starting to come up nicely. Marjorie always loved that smell. I found a photo of Mom, he said. One from her birthday. You were dancing with her in the yard. I remembered that day. The way she laughed when I dipped her too low and nearly dropped her. The way Evan clapped along. You were happy, he said. Yes, I said. We were. He finally looked at me. I don't know why I let her treat you that way. I don't know what I thought I was protecting. But I wasn't protecting you. Or her. Just my own cowardice. The wind blew between us. Cool and sharp. I've gone over it 1,000 times, he said. What I could have done differently. How I let it happen. I know it's late. Maybe too late. It is, I said quietly. He nodded again. No defense. No excuses. Just that. I don't expect anything, he added. I just wanted to say it. I looked at him for a long moment. Saw the boy I used to carry on my shoulders at the fair. The teenager who helped me replace the porch rail. The young man who kissed his mother's forehead goodbye in the hospital, not knowing it would be the last time. I saw him, and I also saw the man who stood by while his wife tried to evict me from my own home. Both were real. Both lived in that same pair of tired eyes. Come inside, I said finally. His eyebrows lifted, surprised. Just for a minute, I added. You can see what I built. He stepped onto the porch with slow, deliberate steps, like he wasn't sure the wood would hold his weight. Inside, the house smelled of stew, Walter's cooking, and pine from the floor polish Reuben used. Evan looked around, taking in the wall of photos, the residence, our dinners, the garden in bloom. This was what I was afraid of, he said softly. That you'd be fine without me. I wasn't, I said. Not at first. He nodded. But now I am, I added. He glanced toward the kitchen, where voices laughed over a card game. You found family. I didn't find them, I said. I let them in. He took out a small envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. What's this? A photo, he said. Of you and Mom. I thought maybe it belonged here more than with me. I opened it. It was the picture he'd mentioned. Her birthday. Me in suspenders, her in a floral dress, both of us mid-laugh under the string lights in the backyard. The happiness in our faces was loud enough to drown out every wrong that came after. I set the photo on the shelf, next to her gardening gloves. He looked around once more. I'll go, he said. Take care of yourself, I replied. At the door, he turned back. I'm sorry, Dad. I know, I said. But some things don't get fixed. They just get lived with. He nodded. And then he left. I stood there a while after he drove away, the silence thicker than usual. Not painful. Not peaceful. Just real. The door creaked open behind me. It was Albert. Everything all right? He asked. Yeah, I said. Just an old echo passing through. He stepped out beside me. Want me to throw another log on the fire? Yeah. That'd be good. We went inside. The fire crackled. The men played cards. Nathan was expected the next day. Life continued. And the house, our house, stayed warm. Would you have forgiven your son in this moment? Tell us below. We held the ribbon cutting on a cool Saturday morning, just as the leaves began to turn amber and gold. No press. No mayor. Just friends, neighbors, and the men who now called this place home. There was no red carpet, just the old brick walkway we'd cleaned and lined with mums from Lydia's garden. I stood by the door with a pair of garden shears. Someone handed me a ribbon. Walter muttered, "Should have used duct tape, feels more honest." That got a laugh. Before I cut the ribbon, I looked out at the small crowd. Nathan stood in the front with Lily on his shoulders. Reuben leaned on his cane, proud as ever. Lydia held up her phone, recording with tears in her eyes. Even Tom, who swore he didn't cry, looked suspiciously misty. I cleared my throat. I built my first house when I was 28. Put every dime I had into it. Raised a family there. Buried a wife from that front porch. And then I lost that house. Not to a fire. Not to foreclosure. But to something worse, entitlement. Silence. Disrespect. A few heads bowed. No one interrupted. But then I realized, I continued, a house isn't just a roof. It's not walls or tiles or tax records. It's what you fill it with. And this house, this one here, was built from what was left of me. From grief. From resolve. And from the love of a woman who never let me feel small. I looked down at the ribbon. Her name was Marjorie. And this is her house now. I cut the ribbon. The crowd clapped, and we let them inside. Marjorie's place breathed with life. The kitchen smelled like baked apples and cinnamon, Lydia's latest creation. The living room buzzed with voices, warm and low, like a radio tuned to a station only good souls could hear. Jerome played the piano in the corner, his fingers finding melodies even arthritis couldn't take away. People wandered the halls, admiring the framed photos of our residence, our shared meals, our garden. Each room had a plaque beside it with the occupant's name and a quote they'd chosen. Albert's read, "Still kicking, just a bit slower." Reuben said, "No blood family, but more brothers than I can count." I watched from the stairs, hands in my pockets, heart full. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man rebuilding his life. I felt like a man who had finished something worth starting. After the event, I went out to the backyard, now fully grown in. The garden beds overflowed with tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and flowers. There was even a wooden bench with a small plaque, in memory of Marjorie. "You are still the heart of this home." I sat there for a while. The late sun poured down in gold ribbons across the grass. Charlie laid at my feet, tail thumping softly. I reached into my coat and pulled out the old photo Evan had given me. The one of Marjorie and me dancing. I whispered to her again, like I'd done so many times. "I did it, Marge. It's not just a house anymore. It's a haven." A breeze passed through the garden, soft and fragrant. I like to believe that was her, always had. Gentle, quiet, present. Inside, the men were laughing again. Someone had dropped a plate, and Jerome made a joke about being lucky it wasn't the gravy boat. I heard Lily squeal with laughter, and Nathan's deeper voice calming her with ease. Not a day went by that I didn't think about Evan. About how things had gone. But I didn't regret anything. I had given him love. I had given him home. And when he chose to forget what those things meant, I chose to give them to those who wouldn't. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means peace. And I had found mine. That night, we all gathered in the backyard again. No occasion, just grilled sausages, lemonade, and a sky full of stars. I sat beside Nathan and told him stories about his grandma he'd never heard before. He listened the way Evan used to, back when he was small and still thought I hung the moon. At one point, he leaned over and said, "You know, Grandpa. I want to do something like this one day. A place that matters." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You will," I said. "Just make sure you build it on love, not entitlement. That's the only foundation that lasts." He nodded. "Like you did." I didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. Later that night, I walked through the house one last time before bed. Turned off the lights. Checked the windows. Whispered goodnight to Marjorie's photo in the hallway. Then I stood at the front door and looked out across the porch. Quiet. Safe. Whole. This wasn't the house I lost. This was the one I was always meant to build. And in every laugh, every meal, every blooming flower, Marjorie lived again.